Yes, the title of my talk is Beyond Techniques. So thank you for the intro. Am I on?
There you go.
How's that? Oh, that's it. That's definitely on. All right. So thank you. Yes. The title of my talk is Beyond Techniques, and thank you for the introduction. My name is Jess Reynolds, and I've been practicing now both acupuncture, Chinese medicine, and massage therapy for, I don't know, well over a decade, I would say, and I've come to learn some interesting things in that time. So the thing I want to talk to you about is what I've come to believe is the single most important asset that you have for the success of your practice. And I think it's more important than like your new awesome hydraulic table, which are awesome. Probably more important, in fact, I believe it's more important than your toolbox of amazing tools, also very important, and even more important than those specific techniques that you have mastered. And of course, the asset that I'm talking about, well, it's you. So you might be thinking at this point in time, like, of course, it's me. Like, without me, there is no practice, and I can't be successful. Or maybe you're thinking, well, is this going to be a talk on self-care? And kind of it is, but it's a little different. I mean, self-care is essential, right? It's very important, taking care of our body, nutrition, movement, all of that. Very important stuff. But the thing I'm talking about is a little bit more intrinsic. It's a little bit more in the inner world. So, I started a company about 4 years ago. It's AIM Online Education, and throughout this company, I've been on a very interesting journey. When I started it, I asked one very important question. Because you see, this company is designed to create continuing education courses and professional development courses for massage therapists, but other wellness practitioners as well, acupuncturists, yoga therapists, osteopaths, so on. And that question I asked was this: what exactly is required for a massage therapist to be successful? Like, that was the core mission I had behind developing this education company. Is what does it take exactly to be successful in this industry? So to answer this question, I went all out. I sent a survey out to a little over 3,000 massage therapists, asking a wide variety of different questions. The obvious ones, like if you could have any continuing education course, what would it be? Other things like, what do you love about your job? What do you not love about your job? And a whole bunch of other questions. Now, I didn't stop there. I also interviewed a little over 40 very successful wellness business owners. And these are people who own clinics with a number of different massage therapists, anywhere from 3 to over 20. And in these interviews, they weren't just casual conversations. I mean, we really dove deep. We talked about the nuts and bolts of what's required to be successful in this business. And many of those interviews can be found on my podcast, Aim in Practice. And we didn't just talk about what's required for success as a wellness business. We also talked about, well, what do you look for when hiring a massage therapist? So your clinic and your wellness center can be successful, but also that each individual person you hire can be successful. So we really, really dig deep into this idea of success in this business. Now, I took it one step further, and I dug into as much industry data as I could possibly find, all to try and answer that one question: what exactly does it take to be successful in this business? So the answer I eventually came to, it may surprise you because it definitely surprised me, and that answer is your own inner work, your self-development, the thing you do as an individual to grow as an individual. Now, I suppose now is a good time to define what I mean by success. So what do I mean? Well, I use 3 main criteria. Now, we could define it many different ways, but these are the 3 things I use to define what success is. Number 1 is you make good money, right? Like that's an obvious marker of success, right? I'm sure we could agree. You've got enough money not just to live, but to live comfortably, have a little extra, right? So that's the first criteria. Now, the next criteria is sustainability or longevity. I think that's another very important criteria for success, that you can keep doing this year after year after year. Not sure if you're familiar with the burnout statistics or how long the average career span is in massage therapy, but it's actually not that long, depending on who you ask. It's 4 years, 6 years, so it's relatively short. So longevity and sustainability, that's an important criteria. And then the last criteria, which I think is incredibly important, is job satisfaction. You actually love what you do. Or worst case scenario, you like it. Now, I'm not expecting you to walk out the door every single day clicking your heels, but what I would hope is you're not walking out the door dragging your heels. You enjoy what you do. So these are the 3 different criteria that I'm going to use when we define success. So now I'll take you on the journey of what I discovered through this process. Let's talk about those interviews. Well, I ask these wellness practitioners and these clinic owners what exactly it takes to be successful. And pretty much unanimously, here are the answers I got. Things like communication skills was a very common one. Listening skills, that came up over and over again. I got things like empathy, that's a pretty important one. Emotional intelligence, emotional regulation, and my personal favorite, which came up a remarkable number of times, which is you need to have your, I swear, stuff together. You need to have your stuff together, right? That came up a lot. Now, what I found very interesting is, and you probably noticed the exact same thing, the suspicious absence of technique. The suspicious absence of this modality or that modality. Out of all of these interviews, it only actually came up once, a very specific thing, and it's that you should have a good therapeutic outcome. Right? That came up once, but all the rest of the time was these other things, right? So I dug in, and I said, well, what about that? What about what actually happens in the treatment room? What about that therapeutic outcome? Doesn't that matter? And everybody said, okay, yeah, well, of course, that matters, right? Like, you need to have a good therapeutic outcome. It needs to be a good massage. You need to do your best to help your client get to where they want to be. That matters a lot. But what I found so interesting is that was almost a given, not an afterthought, but like, yes, technique matters, skill matters, what you do in the room matters, your individual techniques. But the emphasis, by and large, was on this inner development, the skills we develop within ourselves. All right. So then, what do we do with that information, right? What do you do knowing that the secret sauce to success is your own personal development? Where do you start? Well, you know, personal development is a $13.5 billion a year industry. You know, you go into the bookstore and you go into the self-development section, type on Amazon, you're looking at well over 100,000 books. Like, where do you even begin? So I asked that question, and I thought long and hard about it, and talked to a lot of people about it, and I reviewed that survey I did. And I came up with what I believe are the two sort of best starting points for us as wellness practitioners. The best places to start in our own inner development that ultimately lead to and make success inevitable. So the first one that I've identified is alignment. Alignment and authenticity, they kind of go together, but authenticity is kind of that buzzword, right? But alignment. So let's talk about why that matters and why fostering and understanding what alignment feels like in your body, it will lead to that inevitable success. So I'm not sure if you've had this experience. I certainly have. You work in a clinic that just doesn't seem to fit, right? Like maybe all you want to do is you want to put on your flowy pants, light a stick of incense, light some candles, turn down the lights, do a nice relaxation massage for an hour or 10, right? Like that's what you want to do. But you get a job in a chiro clinic or a physio clinic, and the expectation is lights on, specific problem, specific technique, therapeutic outcome, beautiful stuff. But inside you're like, where's my flowy pants? Like I just want to chill out. Or maybe it's the exact opposite, right? Like maybe you get a job working in a spa because you know you get pretty good tips in a spa, it pays relatively well, it's easy work, but in reality you want to work with athletes, so you want to do those therapeutic techniques. And what you'll find is if this is the case, you kind of get to that 6-month territory and you're just like, I hate everything about this, I'm wiped out. And you start thinking to yourself, right, that idea that's been thrown around throughout this weekend and we hear often is this idea of burnout. I'm starting to feel burnout. Well, a good chunk of that feeling is a lack of alignment. And that's a very important thing. It is a feeling. How do you know when you are in alignment? Well, you feel it. You know it. And that kind of goes into that idea of sustainability and longevity and being able to love what you do. Well, it turns out when you are in alignment with what you really want to be doing, you can do it all the time. There's this idea, and it's called effortless action. The more common term for it is flow, a flow state, right? In Chinese medicine, so that's primarily what I practice, we call it Wu Wei, right? So it's been around for a long time, and this idea of effortless action is being so in alignment with what you're doing and enjoying it so much that it feels like it doesn't take any effort. It feels like you could do it all day and you're not wiped out at the end of it. You're fueled, and as Mark said this morning during the panel, right? Like you get to the end of the day and you're tired, sure, but you're not wiped out. So that's his first part. Now the other part, authenticity, is also important. Authenticity is being you, like being genuinely you. And that matters a lot too, because a big part of what we do is, well, of course, we're spending all day, every day, one-on-one with our clients, and we really want to make sure that we're spending our time around people we really like or want to be around, right? And we can do that by just being ourselves. And when you're not, right, when you put on the professional facade and you're trying to act like somebody you're not, or work in a situation or environment that doesn't fit you, And even your marketing material, the people you attract into your business, if they're not in alignment with your authentic self, again, you're not really building a practice you love because you're working with people you don't really want to spend your days around. And then when you are authentic and you do this, it kind of leads into that niche conversation which gets talked about often. And how do you find your niche? Well, you be you. Now, discovering that, I can promise you, discovering that doesn't come through scrolling through Instagram. It comes through spending time sitting with yourself, going out for a long walk in nature, meditation, counseling, these types of things, right? So that part's important. But let's talk about that second thing I mentioned that's really essential. And that, I believe, is emotional regulation. And that matters a lot. So I'm going to borrow some ideas from physics and also talk about physiology to describe this. So in physics, there's this idea called coherence. Now, what coherence means is, let's say on that wall over there at the back, there were 100 clocks, all with the pendulum swinging back and forth, right? And then right in the middle, we were to put one really big clock, like 10 times the size of the other ones, and get that pendulum swinging. Well, it wouldn't take very long before all the 100 other clocks are all swinging at the exact same frequency. That's the idea of coherence in physics. Now, it turns out the exact same thing happens with us. So humans, or virtually any living being, we all emit a frequency. The clock is 1 hertz per second, but humans emit electromagnetic frequencies. And I don't want to dig too deep and veer into the wonderful world of like metaphysics and woo, but we kind of have to go there a little bit because we do emit these frequencies. Now, the argument isn't whether we do or do not. Is it a foot from your body, 10 feet from your body, like how far do these frequencies go? But it turns out that's irrelevant for us because we're in contact with other bodies all the time. So we emit these frequencies, and these frequencies we emit, just like that really big clock, affect all of the other clocks around us. And here's the thing, you are the biggest clock, right? When you walk into that room as the massage therapist, as the practitioner, you do set the emotional tone in a very strong way. And this emotional tone, it is literally essential to our survival as infants. There's an idea called co-regulation, right? So for any of you parents in the room, when babies are crying, like when they're really amped up and they're upset, what we all do innately? Well, we grab the baby, we hold it to our chest, we take a couple breaths, we pat it on the back. And what we're actually doing in that, like we're doing it because we love this little baby, but we're co-regulating. We're using our nervous system to regulate theirs. That's how it works. Our nervous system regulates these infants. It turns out that doesn't stop at the age of 4. That doesn't stop ever. Our nervous system affects our clients' nervous systems. So when we are emotionally regulated as practitioners, and emotionally regulated is you're calm, you're collected, you're present, you're feeling conscious, curious, right? When you're in this state where you can walk in and you feel chill, immediately walk into that room, 50% of the job of relaxing your client is done. Just by your own therapeutic presence. Just by fostering this inside yourself. You haven't even laid a hand on your client and already you get that big breath and they go, I'm in an okay place. I can relax a little bit in here. And as we know, no matter if you're trying to fix a ligament in the ankle or a capsule in the shoulder, the fact is we're all trying to relax our clients' nervous systems because one thing I always say is we work on the muscles, we work on the fascia, we work on the capsules, we work with the nervous system. So when we do regulate our own emotions, when we spend time doing this, when we understand we are that biggest clock, and we know that to get our clock to be in coherence, to have our clock at a nice frequency, it requires us being emotionally regulated, and that affects our clients. We make a huge step forward. And we all know what it feels like, right? We all know what it feels like when you walk up to somebody, maybe you got a significant other, you don't even have to see their face. You could just walk outside the room that they're in and you're like, oh, I feel something's off, right? Or maybe you've had the opportunities to spend some time with somebody who is enlightened. You've gone to like a Dalai Lama presentation or something like that, and you're within his 100-foot bubble and you're like, I feel better immediately, right? So we do the same thing. All right, so let's try and tie this together now. How does this matter? Well, we've covered a fair bit of material, right? But ultimately what I'm trying to say is your techniques, they do really matter. Obviously, they matter a lot. But the things we do inside and the therapeutic presence that we bring into the room matter as well. And these include things like alignment, they include things like being authentically you, and of course your emotional regulation. What I haven't talked about is how to do it, right? That's its own massive conversation. We'll talk a little bit about it tomorrow if any of you are going to my workshop on acupressure, because it turns out that's really what acupressure is. So we'll talk more about it then, but there are many different techniques, and the menu is large when it comes to the things we can do. I mean, my personal favorite, meditation, matters a lot. And you do 3 deep breaths, turns out you're meditating. It's not some magical, challenging thing. So taking a moment before you walk into the room, just a moment, having a few breaths and knowing that you are walking into the room as the big clock. So with that, I say, doing these things and doing your own inner work, this is the secret to what I believe is sustainable success. This is what turns a transactional relationship into more of a transformational one, right? This is the thing, I believe, that extra little bit that takes those one-time clients into the lifelong advocates of you as a practitioner, who are constantly referring people to you as that person, as that therapist. So then the call to action, as it were, the thing I would encourage you to do is take some time this week, ideally, the sooner the better, and sit down and maybe write down your values, right? Like, what do you as an individual value most? When you reflect on your past as a practitioner, when were the times in your practice where you felt that effortless action, that this feels right, this is the right thing for me? Or what might be even more helpful is remembering the times where it didn't, right? As they say, some of the best ways to figure out who you are is to figure out who you aren't first. So reflect on those times, write it down, and then see what baby steps you could take to making every single day a little bit more of that, a little bit more you get to go to work and do the thing you love to do, work with the people you want to spend your time with. And also breathe. That's probably pretty important when we get our clients to do it all the time. In my opinion, the best massage is the one where you come out feeling like you should be paying them. You know, I feel super chill afterwards. So with that, then, I do thank you for your time. I appreciate it. The last thing I'd say is, while this has all been about aiming for success, I think maybe we should try and aim for something a little bit more than success, aiming for fulfillment, both for ourselves, I think, as well as for our clients. So if you have any questions about this, I will be around the rest of today, and I'll be around all day tomorrow. As I mentioned, I'm doing a workshop on acupressure where we talk about that. Now, I would love to chat more about it if this has resonated with you in any way. Certainly track me down. I'm happy to chat. And with that, I really thank you for your time.